Welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller. Through my seminar and coaching business, Wings Unfolded, I help professionals who are ready to transition from the life they used to want to the one for which they were made. Transitions can be scary and challenging, especially when what used to make us happy doesn't anymore. Sometimes we feel stuck in a transition, not really knowing which next steps to take. Because we are constantly developing and growing in mind, body, and spirit, I believe life is a constant series of transitions. My intention with these videos is to help people through their life transitions by sharing I'm continuing to learn how to navigate my own. I offer insights, tips, ideas, and maybe even some courage to get through the times in your life when you feel stuck, so you can keep moving in the direction that serves your highest good. So I want to start today's episode with a story from my own life. Several years ago, I had a major performance flop. I am a musician. I play the flute. And I was actually subbing as a piccolo player for a regional symphony. We were playing a really big monster piece, and I had a lot of solos that I had to intensely prepare for in this piece. I worked really hard, and the conductor seemed to really enjoy what I was doing with my playing, and that made me feel really good, and I was excited for the performance. But when it got to the performance, something seemed off, and I was thrown off guard in the middle of the performance, and I ended up botching my solos. Afterwards, I felt really embarrassed and ashamed and defeated. I felt like a humongous failure. Days after that, I kept running the performance through my head, trying to figure out what went wrong. The self-blame and shame continued as well. It felt like a punishment to myself, basically. Part of me felt like I needed to give up completely on my performance career after that. I couldn't seem to let go of the experience. And I didn't want to let myself off the hook. I was afraid that if I did, I might never achieve the performance standards I'd set for myself. Days later, I started asking how long I wanted to punish myself for what happened. I really hated feeling that way every single day, all day. It was draining my energy to accomplish anything else, and it really wasn't getting me anywhere. I decided that it was time for me to shift my perspective. The first step in that shift was to completely accept what had happened, and then to also accept myself. I realized that I had been trying to change what had happened using my mind, which, as we all know, trying to change the past is pretty impossible without a time machine, of course. But every time in my mind I was replaying what had happened in that concert, there was a part of me that hoped that maybe I could change the outcome. I realized that no matter how many times I hit rewind in my head, the outcome was always going to be the same. It takes a lot of energy to try and change the past, and no matter how much energy you throw at it, it's never going to work. But I slowly learned that even though I couldn't change the past, I could change my present and potentially my future. Accepting myself involved shifting into a more loving perspective. I decided to look at the facts of the performance rather than the judgments I was making about myself. First of all, after the concert, the conductor had admitted to me that she had had a bad sinus infection and was hopped up on medicine during the performance. That sort of explained why the tempos were so fast. Also, I had been pushing myself really hard in recent months because I was trying to get more work in my area. Therefore, my expectations were sky high for myself. So no wonder why I was so nervous. In the end, I knew I had to look at this performance as one in a collection of performances I had done and would do over the course of my life. And I had to recognize that no matter what happened, I always do the best I can under the circumstances of any given moment. Why would I ever do any less? Ultimately, this performance was a great victory for me because it taught me about the importance of looking at the bigger picture. And it taught me about the importance of self-acceptance. One of the thoughts I've had recently, for whatever reason, is that the longest relationship any of us ever have in our lives is the relationship we have with ourselves. We're with ourselves when we're born. We'll be there when we die. No matter how hard we try, we never can take a break from ourselves. Because of this, it's really important to cultivate a healthy and loving relationship with ourselves. An important step in establishing a healthy relationship with yourself is self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is accepting all parts of ourselves. It's accepting how we react and respond to the world around us. It's understanding who we are, how we see the world, and how our perspectives drive our decisions in life. Having compassion for ourselves, no matter what happens, is a humongous part of self-acceptance. And it's also knowing that we're always doing the best that we can in any circumstance. Finally, self-acceptance is releasing the judgment of what we do, say, think, or experience. And it's also acknowledging that whatever happened in the past doesn't mean that it has to happen in the present or the future. It's sometimes easy to fall into thinking that self-acceptance is letting ourselves off the hook for certain things and maybe allowing ourselves to be lazy or give up on self-development. For example, one of the thoughts I had from my story is that if I accepted what happened in the concert, would I just become a bad musician with low standards? The answer is no. There were elements outside of my control in that concert, as there are in any situation in life. When we decide not to accept something about ourselves, what we end up doing is resisting who we really are and resisting what is actually happening in our lives. That's what I initially did in my story. I lost motivation to want to continue developing and growing as a musician. Not accepting what happened and how I reacted would have been more detrimental to me in the long run, actually, because I was wasting my energy on things that weren't serving me. When we shift to accepting all parts of ourselves, we stop putting energy into resisting what is out of our control. Instead, we then have energy to focus on what we do have control over. In my story, I had control over my perspective of what happened in the concert. I had control over whether or not to blame and shame myself. I had an opportunity to see that concert as one more on my ladder to performance experience and success. And I could see how my expectations were set so high, nobody could have achieved them, and they were keeping me stuck and limited. Today, I want to help you work on self-acceptance. I'm going to give you some steps that you can follow and try on your process. Step 1 is to identify what aspects of yourself you have trouble accepting. When in your life did you or do you have a hard time accepting yourself? Maybe there are multiple aspects of yourself that you resist. Make a list. Step 2 is ask, how might a lack of acceptance be holding you back in your life. Write a journal entry about that. Step 3, read through the list of aspects about yourself that you are having a hard time accepting and choose one of them to work with. Ask yourself the following questions. What is really so bad about this part of yourself? Where did you get the idea that this part of yourself is so bad? What's the expectation that you have for yourself? How does this expectation relate to how you expect others to be? What's the message you're really telling yourself and others by holding on to this expectation? For example, my expectation was that I had to play perfectly for performances. The message I was sending myself and possibly to others is that only good musicians play perfectly. This was not a reasonable expectation for myself or anyone else. Finally, ask yourself, how would it feel to release this expectation? And what would you be doing differently? Step 4 is to write a compassionate letter to yourself about this part of yourself that you don't accept. If you can't yet have compassion for yourself, write it from the perspective of a good friend. Emphasize that you did the best that you could under the circumstances you were under. Point out the facts, remove all the judgment. Step 5, look for the lessons. Developing that aspect of yourself that you have a hard time accepting had a purpose. What purpose did this part of yourself serve? For me, I developed I have to play perfect performances when I was a student for a variety of reasons. I think that message came from some of my teachers, conductors, peers, and also listening to recordings of other musicians. And I think it also came out of fear of not being worthy, of not being valued, of not being accepted as a musician. The lesson I needed to learn was that sometimes you can't control the conditions of the performance, and you just have to do the best you can. And I learned that I needed to stop taking my performances so seriously, or else I would get stuck in self-blame and shame. Step 6 in this process is to check in with how you feel. After dissecting this aspect of yourself, how much closer are you to accepting it? How much do you recognize that this aspect of you is actually trying to help you be as good as you can be? And how are you doing with releasing judgment of this aspect of yourself? This is a process. You may have to revisit this exercise or other self-acceptance exercises multiple times. But every time you come back to it, the deeper you will be in accepting yourself. It's work that's worth doing because ultimately what you're doing is creating a framework on which you can understand who you are. And it can prevent you from getting stuck in a cycle of shame and blame. My focus word for 2021 is freedom. And what I'm learning through this exploration and self-acceptance is that when we cultivate more self-acceptance, we free up energy that we can use for making our lives better internally and externally. We also free ourselves to make powerful choices about who we want to be in the world at any given moment. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm always so grateful for your presence and also to hear any of your thoughts, ideas, and experiences with these topics and how they resonate with you. Please like and or share these videos with friends and family who would benefit from these topics as well. Also, I want to mention that I am in the final stages of writing my book, The Book of Stuck, and I will be announcing a book launch party very soon. It would be so great to have you join me in that celebration. If you want to know when that will happen, go over to my website and subscribe to receive emails from me. I also deliver free resources, updates, and developments straight to your inbox. And if you're ready to embark on some transitions in your life, consider setting up a free coaching session with me. You can sign up on my website, www.tess-miller.com, go to Services, click on the Test Your Wings complimentary session, and set up a time on my calendar. You can also find me on Facebook under my business name, Wings Unfolded, or you can find me by name, Tess Miller, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to connect with you. Remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Take care and have an awesome week.